A single shot ruptured the Tarkalian's helmet, spraying viscous purple blood across the rubble-strewn streets. Talon froze, his plasma rifle lowering in shock as he watched his squad mate collapse against the crumbling brick wall, the gaping wound in his forehead still smoking. The firefight erupted around them, crude human projectiles slamming into alien armor with jarring force. Talon had never seen anything like it. His species' advanced technology and combat prowess should have made short work of the primitives. Instead, these ragtag humans used brutal guerrilla tactics and sheer ferocity to strike fear into the marrow of his bones. They wielded their inferior weapons with lethal precision, coordinating ambushes that outmaneuvered his elite unit at every turn. As more Tarkalians fell, their purple blood mingling with the dust and debris, a lone human soldier caught Talon's eye. The man stood firm amidst the chaos, a salvaged alien weapon gripped in his steady hands, as he single-handedly held off an entire Tarkalian assault. The human's eyes blazed with grim determination, unflinching even as plasma bolts scorched the air around him. Sullivan, his tactical display, helpfully identified. Something in Sullivan's indomitable stance shook Talon to his core. This human, this primitive, fought with a raw skill and tenacity that defied everything Talon knew about warfare. Icy realization crept through his veins as he began to understand. They had catastrophically underestimated Earth and its defenders. This wasn't a simple peacekeeping mission. This was a fight for survival against an enemy unlike any they had ever faced. Mind reeling, Talon dragged his wounded comrades to safety, unable to shake the piercing glare Sullivan had fixed him with across the bullet-riddled battlefield. Those hard, defiant eyes promised only one thing: a harrowing war ahead that would test Talon's very understanding of the universe itself. He shuddered, finger trembling against his rifle's trigger, as humanity's indomitable will seared itself into his psyche. As the battle raged on, Talon found his thoughts consumed by the human soldier called Sullivan. The man's unyielding drive and uncanny ability to rally his outmatched forces gnawed at Talon's mind, eroding the certainty of Tarkalian superiority with each passing skirmish. Talon's observations of the humans intensified, his keen eyes studying their every move as they repeatedly outmaneuvered his own troops. In a particularly brutal engagement, he watched in awe as Sullivan led a daring rescue operation, using improvised explosives and guerrilla tactics to draw Tarkalian fire away from trapped civilians. The selfless act left Talon stunned, a creeping sense of doubt taking root in his heart. As the war ground on, Talon's growing unease was compounded by the arrival of General Zarek, a grizzled Tarkalian commander known for his ruthless tactics and unwavering belief in their species' dominance. Zarek wasted no time in berating Talon for his perceived weakness, demanding a more aggressive approach to crushing the human resistance. Torn between his duty and his growing respect for the humans, Talon made a dangerous decision. Under the guise of a ceasefire negotiation, he arranged a secret meeting with Sullivan, determined to understand what drove the humans to such fierce defiance. In a tense, secluded encounter, Talon found himself face-to-face with the hardened soldier, expecting a bloodthirsty savage. Instead, he met a weary man fighting to protect his people from an unprovoked invasion. Sullivan's words struck a chord within Talon, appealing to his sense of honor and forcing him to confront the possibility that the Tarkalians were on the wrong side of history. As Talon left the meeting, his mind reeled with the weight of this revelation. The seeds of doubt had been planted, and he knew that he could no longer blindly follow the hardline stance of his superiors. But to act on his growing conviction would mean betraying his own kind, risking everything he had ever known. With each passing day, the conflict escalated, and Talon found himself increasingly torn between his loyalty to the Tarkalian cause and his gnawing sense that their invasion was a grave injustice. As he watched the humans fight with unbreakable spirit, he knew that he would soon face an impossible choice, one that would challenge the very foundations of his beliefs and reshape the course of the war itself. Plasma fire lit up the night sky, casting eerie shadows across the rubble-strewn battlefield. Talon gripped his rifle tightly, his heart heavy with the knowledge that the true fight was only just beginning, a battle not just for Earth, but for the very soul of the Tarkalian Empire. The weight of this realization settled upon his shoulders as he moved forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Talon's world shattered as General Zarek burst into his quarters, flanked by a squad of heavily armed Tarkalian soldiers. The general's eyes blazed with fury as he thrust an accusing finger at Talon. "You dare consort with the enemy?" Zarek bellowed. "Your treachery has been exposed, Talon. You will face the full consequences of your actions." Talon's heart raced as the gravity of his situation sank in. He had been discovered. There was no turning back now. As Zarek's men moved to seize him, Talon acted on pure instinct. He lunged for his plasma rifle, sending a barrage of searing bolts towards his former comrades. The Tarkalians scattered, giving Talon the opening he needed. He fled into the night, the shouts of pursuers echoing behind him. Talon's mind reeled as he ran, his loyalties torn asunder. He had betrayed his own kind, but the weight of the humans' struggle had become too much to bear. He knew he had to find Sullivan, the one human who might understand his plight. Talon moved through the war-torn streets, evading Tarkalian patrols with the skills honed by a lifetime of military training. When he finally reached the coordinates Sullivan had given him, he found himself face to face with a group of wary human fighters. Sullivan stepped forward, his eyes narrowed. "Why are you here, Talon? What game are you playing?" Talon met his gaze unflinchingly. "No games. I've been branded a traitor by my own people. I need your help." A tense silence stretched between them before Sullivan finally nodded. "We've got a lot to discuss. Come with me." As Talon followed Sullivan into the depths of the Resistance hideout, he marveled at the ingenuity of the human rebels. Makeshift workshops hummed with activity as fighters repaired salvaged Tarkalian tech and modified human weapons. At the center of it all stood a man with a keen, calculating gaze, Marcus Wright. Wright eyed Talon appraisingly. "Sullivan says you're on our side now. Prove it." Talon hesitated only a moment before divulging everything he knew about Tarkalian tactics, weaponry, and troop deployments. Wright listened intently, his expression shifting from skepticism to grudging respect. "With this intel, we might actually stand a chance," Wright mused. "But we'll need more than just information. We need firepower." A plan began to take shape, a daring raid on a Tarkalian armory to secure the advanced weapons the humans so desperately needed. Talon, Sullivan, and Wright would lead the charge, risking everything to even the odds against the alien invaders. As they prepared for the mission, Talon felt a growing sense of purpose. He had spent his entire life believing in the superiority of the Tarkalian race, but now, among these brave, determined humans, he began to question everything he had ever known. The night of the raid arrived, and Talon found himself in the heart of the enemy base, fighting side by side with Sullivan and Wright. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as they battled their way towards the armory. Suddenly, Talon came face to face with a squad of his former comrades. Time seemed to slow as Talon stared into the eyes of the Tarkalians he had once called brothers. In that moment, he saw the truth. They were not the noble warriors he had once believed them to be. They were invaders, conquerors, crushing a species that only sought to defend its home. Talon made his choice. He raised his weapon and fired, the plasma bolts finding their mark in Tarkalian armor. Sullivan, pinned down by enemy fire, looked up at Talon in shock and gratitude. As the smoke cleared and the resistance fighters made their escape, Talon felt the weight of his actions settling upon him. He had crossed a line from which there could be no return. But as he looked at the faces of the humans around him, their eyes shining with newfound hope, he knew that he had made the right choice. In the days that followed, Talon found himself embraced by the human resistance. They looked to him not as an enemy, but as a valued ally in their desperate fight for survival. Sullivan, in a rare moment of quiet, shared with Talon the human concept of empathy, of seeing the inherent worth in all living beings. Talon's mind raced as he pored over holographic maps of the city with Sullivan and Wright. The narrow streets and crumbling buildings that had once seemed like obstacles now offered a wealth of tactical advantages against the incoming Tarkalian assault. "We'll funnel them through these choke points," Sullivan said, gesturing to several intersections. "Talon, what's their standard formation for urban warfare?" "Tiered assault," Talon replied, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. Heavy units in front, followed by specialized infiltration teams. They'll expect to overwhelm us quickly. Wright nodded grimly. Not this time. We'll give them a fight they won't forget. As dawn broke, the resistance fighters took their positions. Talon crouched beside Sullivan on a rooftop, the familiar weight of a plasma rifle in his hands, feeling strangely comforting. The distant rumble of Tarkalian war machines grew louder. They're coming, Talon whispered. Sullivan's face was a mask of concentration. Let them come. The first wave of Tarkalian troops marched into view, their armor glinting in the early morning light. For a moment, all was silent. Then chaos erupted. Sniper fire cracked through the air, finding weak points in alien armor with uncanny precision. IEDs detonated beneath Tarkalian heavy units, sending shrapnel and purple blood flying. Human fighters armed with reverse-engineered plasma weapons unleashed searing bolts from windows and alleyways. Talon watched in awe as the humans executed their plan with ruthless efficiency. Each street became a deadly gauntlet, every building a fortress of resistance. Yet the Tarkalians kept coming, their superior numbers threatening to overwhelm the human defenses through sheer attrition. We need to take out their command center, Sullivan growled, ducking as a plasma bolt sizzled overhead. Talon, you're with me. They sprinted through the war-torn streets, dodging debris and ducking enemy fire. Talon led them to a nondescript building where he knew the Tarkalian leadership had set up their mobile headquarters. There, he pointed, but the security protocols... Sullivan grinned, holding up a small device. That's where this comes in. A little gift from our tech team. They fought their way inside, Talon's intimate knowledge of Tarkalian tactics proving invaluable. In the command center, they found themselves face-to-face with a group of stunned Tarkalian officers. Now, Sullivan yelled, tossing the device to Talon. Talon's fingers flew over the alien console, muscle memory taking over as he input the virus. Alarms blared as the Tarkalian systems began to fail, their advanced technology turning against them. Outside, the tide of battle shifted. Wright's voice crackled over the comms. It's working! Push them back! As they fought their way out of the command center, Talon froze. General Zarek stood before him, rage twisting his alien features. Traitor! Zarek spat, lunging at Talon. They grappled fiercely, Talon matching Zarek's strength with a ferocity he had never known he possessed. With a final, decisive move, Talon pinned Zarek to the ground, his plasma rifle aimed at the general's head. Zarek's eyes widened in fear, then confusion as Talon lowered his weapon. Why? The general gasped. Talon stood, his voice steady. Because there's another way, one you'll never understand. He left Zarek lying there, joining Sullivan as they emerged into the sunlight. The streets were littered with Tarkalian and human dead alike, but the alien forces were in full retreat. Sullivan clapped a hand on Talon's shoulder, his eyes shining with gratitude and respect. We couldn't have done this without you. Talon nodded, a complex mix of emotions swirling within him. He had found purpose among these humans, a cause worth fighting for. As he looked out over the battered but unbroken city, he knew that greater challenges lay ahead. The Tarkalian Empire would not take this defeat lightly, and the true test of humanity's perseverance, and his own, was yet to come. The acrid smell of burning circuitry and plasma discharge lingered in the air as Talon surveyed the aftermath of their victory. Humans and Tarkalians alike lay scattered across the rubble-strewn streets, a grim testament to the cost of their hard-won freedom. But there was no time to dwell on the losses. Sullivan's voice cut through the haze of Talon's thoughts. We've got incoming transmissions. It's not over. In the makeshift war room, holographic displays flickered to life, revealing a chilling sight. Vast Tarkalian armadas were assembling in high orbit, their numbers far exceeding anything Earth had yet faced. Wright's face was grim as he delivered the news. Intel suggests they're preparing for a final all-out assault. If they hit us with this kind of force... The words hung unspoken in the air. Total annihilation. Talon's mind raced, years of Tarkalian military training colliding with his newfound loyalty to humanity. He stepped forward, mandibles clicking nervously. There might be a way, but it's beyond dangerous. All eyes turned to him as he outlined his audacious plan. Infiltrate the Tarkalian command ship, disable their systems from within, and cripple the entire invasion force in one fell swoop. Sullivan's eyes narrowed. You're talking about a suicide mission. Perhaps, Talon admitted, but it's the only chance we have. The room erupted in heated debate. Wright argued for the strategic value, while others protested the immense risk. In the end, it was the quiet voice of Sergeant Mara Santos that cut through the noise. I'm in, she said, her scarred face set with tenacity. Better to die fighting than wait for the end. One by one, the others fell in line. A strike team was assembled. Talon, Sullivan, Wright, Santos, and a handful of Earth's most elite soldiers. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but there was no other choice. Days blurred together as they prepared, pushing themselves to the limit in grueling training exercises. Talon shared every scrap of knowledge he possessed about Tarkalian ships and security protocols. Wright pored over stolen data, crafting a virus that could bring an empire to its knees. When the moment finally came, tension crackled through the air like static electricity. They boarded their stealth shuttle, a patchwork of human and Tarkalian technology that they hoped would be their Trojan horse. Space unfolded before them, an inky void punctuated by the ominous silhouettes of the Tarkalian warfleet. Talon's hearts raced as they approached, every instinct screaming at him to turn back. Suddenly, alarms blared. They'd been detected. Evasive maneuvers, Sullivan barked, his hands flying across the controls. The shuttle bucked and weaved as plasma fire erupted around them. Talon watched in horror as two of their escort fighters erupted into balls of superheated gas. There! Santos shouted, pointing to a Tarkalian supply shuttle limping away from the battle. Sullivan needed no further prompting. He threw their craft into a stomach-churning dive, plasma bolts sizzling past the viewports. With a bone-jarring impact, they collided with the Tarkalian shuttle, magnetic grapples locking them together. Boarding team, go, Wright ordered. Talon led the charge, his stolen Tarkalian armor allowing him to bypass the shuttle's security systems. The human strike team followed, their faces grim behind polarized visors. The shuttle's Tarkalian crew never stood a chance. In a brief, brutal firefight, Talon and his team secured their prize. But the victory was not without cost. Two more of their number lay dead, their bodies already cooling in the vacuum of space. As Wright worked to alter the shuttle's transponder codes, Talon gazed out at the looming bulk of the Tarkalian command ship. He knew what awaited them there. The most sophisticated defenses in the galaxy, legions of fanatically loyal troops, and the ever-present specter of failure. Yet as he looked at the determined faces of his human comrades, Talon felt something he had never experienced in all his years serving the Tarkalian Empire. Hope. The captured shuttle's engines flared to life, carrying them towards their destiny. Whatever awaited them aboard that metal Leviathan, Talon knew that the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. Balance hung in the air as Talon and his team approached the Tarkalian command ship. The massive vessel loomed before them, its hull scarred from the recent battle. Talon's mandibles clicked nervously as he inputted the access codes. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss of decompressing air, the airlock opened. They moved swiftly through the corridors, Talon's intimate knowledge of Tarkalian ship design guiding them. The acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the air, evidence of the damage they'd inflicted during their initial assault. This way, Talon whispered, leading them towards the ship's nerve center. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a squad of Tarkalian soldiers. Time seemed to slow as both sides raised their weapons. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air. Sullivan dove for cover, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Santos moved like a blur, her combat knife finding gaps in Tarkalian armor. Talon fought with a ferocity that surprised even himself, years of training merging with his newfound purpose. When the last Tarkalian fell, he stood panting, purple blood staining his armor. "We need to move," Wright urged, already working to bypass the security systems on the bridge doors. Inside, chaos reigned. Tarkalian officers scrambled to regain control of their failing systems. In the center of it all stood Admiral Zorn, his eyes widening in recognition as he saw Talon. You! Zorn snarled, reaching for his weapon. Talon was faster. A single plasma bolt struck Zorn squarely in the chest, and the Admiral crumpled to the ground. Wright wasted no time, plugging his device into the main console. Lines of code flashed across the screens as the virus took hold. "It's done," Wright announced, a grim smile on his face. "Their entire fleet is dead in the water." As they fought their way back to their shuttle, Talon couldn't shake the feeling that this victory had come too easily. His suspicions were confirmed as they approached Earth, greeted by cheering crowds and a hero's welcome. Days passed in a blur of debriefings and celebrations, but as the initial euphoria faded, a gnawing worry took root in Talon's mind. Wright was missing. "He never made it back to the shuttle," Santos confirmed, her face etched with concern. "We thought he was right behind us, but—" Talon's heart sank. In the chaos of their escape, they had left Wright behind. Without hesitation, Talon began planning a rescue mission. He pored over schematics of the Tarkalian command ship, identifying potential holding areas where Wright might be kept. A small team volunteered for the dangerous mission: Sullivan, Santos, and 3 of Earth's most skilled operatives. They set out under the cover of darkness, their stealth shuttle slipping past the disabled Tarkalian ships still orbiting Earth. Boarding the command ship was easier this time, its systems still crippled by Wright's virus. They moved swiftly through the corridors, encountering pockets of resistance from the remaining Tarkalian crew. In the ship's brig, they found Wright. He lay on the floor of a cell, his body battered and broken. For a terrifying moment, Talon thought they were too late. Then Wright's eyes flickered open. "Took you long enough," he rasped, a weak smile on his bloodied face. As they carried Wright back to their shuttle, alarms blared throughout the ship. A voice Talon recognized all too well echoed through the corridors. "Attention all Tarkalian forces," Supreme Commander Kraxus growled. "Prepare for immediate deployment. We will crush these human vermin once and for all." Talon's blood ran cold. He knew Kraxus, the most ruthless and cunning leader in the Tarkalian Empire. If he was taking command, Earth faced a threat unlike any it had seen before. Back on Earth, Wright was rushed into emergency surgery. Talon paced outside the operating room, consumed by guilt. He should never have left Wright behind. Hours later, a weary doctor emerged. "He's stable," she announced. But it was touch and go for a while. Talon slumped in relief. He entered Wright's room, taking a seat beside the bed. Wright's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Talon with effort. "You came back for me," Wright murmured. Talon nodded, his throat tight. "Always." As Wright drifted back to sleep, Talon's communicator buzzed. It was Sullivan, his voice urgent. "We've intercepted Tarkalian transmissions," Sullivan reported. "Kraxus is mobilizing everything they have. And Talon, they're bringing something new, something big." Talon's mind raced. He knew Kraxus, knew the depths of his ruthlessness. Whatever this new weapon was, it posed an existential threat to Earth. In the days that followed, as Wright slowly recovered, Talon worked tirelessly with Earth's leadership to prepare their defenses. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be enough. Not against Kraxus and the full might of the Tarkalian Empire. They needed a plan, something bold, something unexpected. As Talon stared at the holographic display of Kraxus's approaching fleet, an idea began to form. It was dangerous, perhaps suicidal, but it might be their only chance. He looked around the room at the faces of his human comrades. Sullivan, Santos, the now recovered Wright. They had become more than allies. They were his family. "I have a plan," Talon announced, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. "But I can't do it alone." One by one, they nodded, their faces set with relentless drive. As Talon outlined his audacious scheme to infiltrate Kraxus's flagship and sabotage the superweapon, he felt a surge of pride and fear. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The plan was set. Talon led his team towards Kraxus's flagship, their shuttle weaving through the debris of disabled Tarkalian vessels. Sullivan piloted with expert precision, his lips pursed in concentration. "Approaching docking bay," he announced, voice tight. Talon's hearts raced as they touched down. The moment the airlock hissed open, they were met with a hail of plasma fire. Tarkalian soldiers swarmed the hangar, their weapons blazing. "Move!" Talon shouted, returning fire as he dove for cover. The team scattered, each finding shelter behind cargo containers and derelict fighters. Wright's fingers flew across his datapad, attempting to hack the ship's systems. Santos moved like a shadow, her knife finding vulnerable spots in Tarkalian armor with deadly efficiency. Ramirez, a stocky human with a perpetual grin, laid down suppressing fire. "Just like basic training, eh?" he called out, his laughter a stark contrast to the chaos around them. They fought their way deeper into the ship, Talon's knowledge of Tarkalian vessel layouts proving invaluable. But as they approached a critical junction, the resistance intensified. Craxus's elite guard poured into the corridor, their specialized armor deflecting most of the team's firepower. Ramirez's voice cut through the din of battle. "I'll hold them off! Get to the weapon!" Before anyone could protest, he charged forward, lobbing grenades and drawing the guard's attention. The last Talon saw of Ramirez was his determined face as he disappeared into a sea of Tarkalian soldiers. The sacrifice hit Talon hard. He had never understood the human capacity for self-sacrifice, but now, watching Ramirez give his life for his comrades, something shifted within him. With renewed perseverance, he led the team onward. They reached the ship's primary systems core, a cavernous chamber humming with energy. Wright and Santos immediately set to work, their fingers dancing across alien consoles as they attempted to disable the superweapon. Sullivan and Talon took up defensive positions, their weapons trained on the entrance. It wasn't long before waves of Tarkalian soldiers began pouring in. "We need more time," Wright shouted over the sound of plasma fire. Talon and Sullivan fought with everything they had, their movements in perfect sync. But for every Tarkalian they dropped, two more seemed to take their place. Exhaustion began to set in, their reactions slowing. Suddenly, the air filled with an ear-splitting screech. A massive figure burst through the far wall, followed by several more. Talon's blood ran cold as he recognized them. Craxus's rumored super soldiers, their bodies twisted and enhanced beyond recognition. The creatures tore through the human fighters with terrifying ease. Talon watched in horror as his comrades fell, their weapons useless against the augmented Tarkalians' impenetrable hides. Soon Talon stood alone against the monstrosities. His mind raced, years of training, colliding with everything he had learned from his human allies. He moved with a fluid grace, weaving between the lumbering super soldiers. Plasma bolts found chinks in their armor. His blades sought out weak points in their enhanced physiology. One by one, the seemingly unstoppable juggernauts fell. As the last super soldier crashed to the ground, Talon stumbled, his body racked with pain. He had sustained grievous injuries during the fight, purple blood seeping from countless wounds. Through blurring vision, he saw Santos working frantically at the main console. With a final, desperate lunge, she completed the sabotage sequence, the chamber filled with the sound of powering down systems. "It's done," Santos gasped, clutching a gaping wound in her side. She collapsed into Sullivan's arms, her breathing shallow. As Talon's consciousness faded, strange visions flashed before his eyes. He saw humans throughout history, facing insurmountable odds yet refusing to yield. Their indomitable spirit burned like a beacon, calling to him across the vast expanse of space and time. When Talon's eyes snapped open, he found new strength coursing through his battered body. He rose unsteadily to his feet, just as a towering figure entered the chamber. Supreme Commander Craxus stood before them, his eyes blazing with fury. "You dare?" he snarled, unsheathing a crackling energy blade. Talon stepped forward, his own weapon raised. "This ends now, Craxus." The two warriors clashed, their blades meeting in a shower of sparks. Craxus fought with raw power and aggression, each blow threatening to shatter Talon's defenses. But Talon moved with a newfound grace, his movements guided by more than just his training. As they battled across the chamber, Talon felt the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. He fought not just for his own survival, but for the future of humanity and his own people. With every exchange, he pushed Craxus back, the Supreme Commander's confidence wavering. In a final, bold strategy, Talon overloaded his own energy blade. The weapon pulsed with unstable power, threatening to explode at any moment. He lunged forward, driving the blade deep into Craxus's chest. The resulting explosion threw both warriors apart. Talon's body screamed in agony as he collided with a far wall. Through the smoke and debris, he saw Craxus's motionless form. "Talon!" Sullivan's voice cut through the haze of pain. "We need to go. This whole place is coming apart." With the last of his strength, Talon stumbled towards his comrades. Wright and Sullivan supported him as they made their way to the escape pods, leaving the crippled flagship behind. As their pod hurtled towards Earth, Talon's vision began to fade once more. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was the blue-green orb of humanity's homeworld, now safe from destruction. Talon's eyes flickered open, adjusting to the harsh white light of the medical bay. The steady beep of monitoring equipment filled his ears as he took stock of his injuries. Bandages covered much of his body, and a dull ache permeated his bones. "Welcome back," a familiar voice said. Wright sat beside the bed, his own face bearing fresh scars from their ordeal. Talon tried to speak, but his throat was parched. Wright offered him water, which he gratefully accepted. "How long?" Talon rasped. 3 days, Wright replied. "You've been in and out of consciousness. The doctors weren't sure you'd pull through." Memories of their desperate battle aboard Craxus's flagship flooded back. Talon's heart clenched as he recalled Ramirez's sacrifice, Santos's wounds, and Sullivan. "Sullivan?" Talon asked, dreading the answer. Wright's face fell. "He made it back with us, but his injuries were too severe. He passed away yesterday." The news hit Talon like a physical blow. He closed his eyes, grief washing over him in waves. Sullivan had been more than just a comrade. He had become a true friend, perhaps the first Talon had ever known. Days passed as Talon recovered, both physically and emotionally. Earth's leaders held a somber ceremony to honor the fallen. Talon stood at attention, his bandaged body a testament to the cost of their victory. As he listened to the eulogies for Sullivan, Ramirez, and countless others, a deep willpower took root within him. But their time to mourn was cut short. Just as Talon was cleared for light duty, alarming reports began to trickle in. "Tarkalian ships have been spotted in the Kuiper Belt," Santos announced during a briefing, her face grim. "They're regrouping under a new leader, Commander Zalara." The name sent a chill through Talon. He knew Zalara well, a brilliant tactician with an unquenchable thirst for victory. "Intel suggests they're constructing some kind of superweapon," Wright added, pulling up holographic schematics. "An electromagnetic pulse device capable of knocking out all of Earth's technology." The room erupted in worried murmurs. Talon studied the plans, his mind racing. He turned to Wright, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "We need to stop them," Talon said. "And I have a plan." Hours later, Talon found himself aboard a stealth shuttle, accompanied by Wright and a new face, Gunnery Sergeant Malik Khan. The human commando's eyes burned with almost unchecked fury as he checked his weapons. "Those Tarkalian bastards glassed my homeworld," Khan growled. "I'll make them pay." Talon nodded, understanding the man's pain all too well. As their shuttle navigated the treacherous asteroid field surrounding Zalara's base, Talon's thoughts drifted to his former comrade. He and Zalara had once been more than fellow officers. They had been lovers. Now they were on opposite sides of a war that threatened to consume them all. The shuttle shuddered as a proximity mine detonated nearby. Khan's expert piloting kept them on course, weaving through the asteroid-strewn minefield. They touched down on the outer hull of Zalara's fortress, magnetic clamps securing them in place. "Remember the plan," Talon said as they donned their vacuum suits. "We get in, sabotage the EMP weapon, and get out. No heroics." They breached the hull, immediately encountering stiff resistance. Plasma bolts sizzled past as Tarkalian guards swarmed their position. Khan moved like a force of nature, his augmented strength and reflexes making short work of the first wave. Talon and Wright pushed deeper into the base, fighting their way through narrow corridors and security checkpoints. As they neared the EMP weapons control center, a familiar voice rang out over the facility's communication system. "Well, well," Commander Zalara's silky tones dripped with malice. "If it isn't the traitor Talon, come to die with your new human pets?" Talon's grip tightened on his weapon. "It's not too late, Zalara," he called out. "We can end this without further bloodshed." Zalara's laughter echoed through the corridors. "Oh, Talon, still the idealist, even after all this time. No, my dear, this ends only one way, with humanity crushed beneath Tarkalian boots." A massive blast door ahead of them began to slide open. Khan stepped forward, his face set with fierce dedication. "This is where I get off," he said, checking the charges on his plasma grenades. "I'll keep them busy. You two finish the job." Before Talon could protest, Khan charged through the opening, his battle cry drowning out the sound of weapon fire. Talon and Wright pressed on, fighting their way to the control center. Wright immediately set to work, his fingers flying across alien consoles as he attempted to sabotage the EMP weapon. Talon stood guard, his senses on high alert. A thunderous crash shook the entire facility. Through the transparisteel viewport, Talon saw a monstrosity emerge from a hidden bay, a Tarkalian cyborg juggernaut, easily 3 times the size of a normal soldier. Its eyes glowed an eerie red as it smashed through layers of security, heading straight for them. "Right," Talon shouted. "How much longer?" "Almost there," Wright replied, sweat beading on his forehead. "Just need to wait." "No." The console erupted in sparks, throwing Wright backward. Talon helped him to his feet as the juggernaut's massive fist pounded against the control center's reinforced door. "The fail-safes," Wright gasped. "They're too complex. We can't shut it down remotely." The door buckled under another tremendous blow. Talon's mind raced, searching for a solution. Then he saw it, the EMP weapon's power core, pulsing with hardly restrained energy. "We need to overload it," Talon said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "It's the only way." Wright nodded, understanding the implications. They worked furiously, rerouting power and disabling safety protocols. The juggernaut burst through the door just as they finished, its metal frame filled with weaponry. Talon and Wright unleashed everything they had, their weapons barely slowing the cybernetic behemoth. It advanced relentlessly, shrugging off plasma bolts and grenades alike. With a bone-jarring impact, the juggernaut sent Wright flying across the room. He hit the wall with a sickening crunch and lay motionless. Talon stood alone against the monster, his ammunition depleted. The power core behind him whined ominously, reaching critical levels. In that moment, Talon made his choice. He charged the juggernaut, using every ounce of his genetically enhanced strength and speed. Talon's fists pummeled the creature's armored hide, searching for weak points. His bones cracked under the strain, but he pressed on. With a final, desperate effort, he managed to topple the massive cyborg. They crashed to the ground mere meters from the overloading power core. Talon's vision blurred, his body pushed beyond its limits. He saw Wright stirring across the room, slowly regaining consciousness. "Go!" Talon shouted, using the last of his strength to hold the juggernaut down. "Get out of here!" Wright's eyes widened in understanding. He stumbled to his feet, hesitating for just a moment before racing towards the exit. As the power core reached critical mass, Talon closed his eyes. He thought of Sullivan, of all they had sacrificed to reach this point. A strange sense of peace washed over him. The world exploded in blinding light. But death did not come for Talon. Instead, he found himself floating in a void, surrounded by swirling energies. Time seemed to stretch and compress, memories flashing before his eyes, not just his own, but those of countless humans who had faced insurmountable odds. When Talon's consciousness snapped back to reality, he was lying in a field of debris, his body battered but somehow intact. The explosion had hurled him clear of the facility, scattering the remains of Zalara's base across the asteroid's surface. Talon struggled to his feet, his enhanced physiology already working to heal his wounds. He activated his suit's emergency beacon, hoping against hope that Wright had managed to escape. Hours later, a stealth shuttle appeared on the horizon. Talon's heart leapt as he recognized the craft. It was Wright's. The human had survived after all. As Talon climbed aboard, Wright's face was a mixture of relief and disbelief. "How in the hell did you survive that?" he asked, helping Talon to a seat. Talon shook his head, still processing the experience himself. "I'm not entirely sure," he admitted, but I think I've been given a second chance, and I know what we need to do next." During the journey back to Earth, Talon shared his revelation with Wright. The cycle of violence between their species had to end, and he believed diplomacy was the key. Wright was skeptical at first, but as Talon laid out his plan, the human began to see the potential. "It's risky," Wright said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But if we can pull it off—" Talon nodded. "It's our best chance to end this war before it destroys both our peoples." Upon their return, Talon and Wright faced fierce opposition from Earth's military leadership. The idea of negotiating with the Tarkalians was met with outrage and accusations of treason. But Talon's impassioned plea, backed by Wright's unwavering support, eventually swayed enough key figures to greenlight their mission. Weeks of careful planning followed. Using Wright's expertise in covert operations and Talon's inside knowledge of Tarkalian protocols, they devised a strategy to contact Commander Zalara without alerting the more hawkish elements of her forces. Their opportunity came when intelligence reports indicated Zalara had established a secret outpost in the asteroid belt. As their stealth shuttle approached the hidden base, proximity alarms blared to life. "We've been spotted," Wright called out, his hands flying over the controls. "Tarkalian interceptors incoming." Talon gripped his seat as Wright executed a series of bone-jarring evasive maneuvers. Plasma bolts sizzled past the viewport as the human pilot wove through the asteroid field, using the space debris as cover. "There!" Talon pointed to a camouflaged hangar bay, barely visible against the pockmarked surface of a massive asteroid. "That's our entry point." Wright gunned the engines, pushing the shuttle to its limits. They slipped through the opening with mere centimeters to spare, the pursuing fighters unable to match their precision. As the hangar doors slammed shut behind them, they were met by a contingent of heavily armed Tarkalian soldiers. At their center stood Commander Zalara, her eyes narrowing as she recognized Talon. "You have exactly 10 seconds to explain why I shouldn't have you both executed on the spot," Zalara said, her voice cold and measured. Talon stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Because I bring a chance to end this war, Zalara, for the good of both our peoples." Zalara's expression flickered with interest, despite her obvious distrust. She motioned for her guards to lower their weapons. "You have 5 minutes to convince me, traitor. Choose your words carefully." And so began the most crucial negotiation of Talon's life. With Wright providing a human perspective, they laid out their proposal for an armistice. Zalara listened impassively, her face betraying no emotion as Talon appealed to her strategic mind and sense of honor. But it was only when Talon revealed the existence of the Tarkalian Supreme Council's secret bioweapon program that Zalara's composure cracked. Her eyes widened in genuine shock and disgust. This cannot be true," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "We are warriors, not butchers." Before Talon could press his advantage, alarms blared throughout the base. A frantic voice came over the comms. "Commander, we're under attack. General Thrax's forces have breached our outer defenses." Zalara's face hardened as she made her decision. "It seems we have a common enemy," she said, unholstering her weapon. "Let's continue this discussion after we deal with these fanatics." As plasma fire erupted around them, Talon felt a surge of hope. It wasn't peace yet, but it was a start. As plasma fire erupted around them, Talon dove for cover behind a fallen support beam, his mind racing to process this unexpected turn of events. Zalara crouched beside him, her face a mask of unyielding commitment. "Thrak!" she spat, her voice filled with venom. "That warmongering fool never could see beyond his own bloodlust." Wright's voice crackled over the comm, urgent and strained. "We've got multiple breaches. They're flooding in from all sides." Talon exchanged a quick glance with Zalara. In that moment, an unspoken agreement passed between them. They would fight together, for now. "Wright, fall back to our position," Talon ordered, his enhanced senses already mapping out escape routes and defensive positions. "We need to regroup and formulate a plan." As Wright joined them, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and ozone, Zalara's eyes narrowed. "There's more at stake here than you realize," she said, her voice low. "Thrak. He's not just after conquest. He has access to something far worse. Before she could elaborate, a thunderous explosion rocked the facility. Through the settling dust, Talon caught glimpses of Thrax's forces, heavily armored Tarkalian shock troops, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. "We need to move," Wright urged, his face streaked with sweat and grime. "This position won't hold for long." Talon nodded, his mind already formulating a strategy. "Zalara, you know this base better than anyone. Is there a secure location where we can regroup and assess the situation?" The Tarkalian commander's lips twisted into a grim smile. "There's an auxiliary command center 3 levels down. If we can reach it, we might have a chance." With Zalara leading the way, they fought through corridors awash in chaos. Tarkalian loyalists clashed with Zalara's own troops, the air filled with the screech of energy weapons and the cries of the wounded. As they descended deeper into the heart of the asteroid base, Zalara filled them in on the true nature of the threat they faced. Thrak had gained access to a devastating bioweapon, one capable of eradicating all human life. "It's why I agreed to hear you out," Zalara admitted as they barricaded themselves in the auxiliary command center. This goes beyond our conflict. It's genocide." Talon's fist clenched at his sides, his enhanced muscles coiled with tension. "We need to stop him, whatever it takes." Wright nodded grimly, already pulling up schematics of the base on a holographic display. "If we can locate the bioweapon, maybe we can neutralize it before Thrak has a chance to deploy it." As they formulated their desperate plan, alarms blared throughout the facility. Zalara's eyes widened in horror as she scanned incoming data streams. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He's mobilizing. Thrax gathered a fleet in the Xrillian Nebula. If he reaches Earth with that bioweapon—" Talon's mind raced, weighing options and calculating risks. They needed to act fast, but they also needed backup. With Zalara's help, he established a secure comlink to Earth's military command. What followed was a frantic negotiation, with Talon and Wright pleading their case while Zalara provided crucial intelligence. It was a hard sell. The idea of working with Tarkalians, even dissidents, was met with fierce resistance. But as the gravity of the threat became clear, minds began to change. Within hours, a joint task force was assembled, a mixture of human special forces and Zalara's loyal Tarkalian troops. As they prepared to embark on their desperate mission into the heart of the Xrillian Nebula, Talon found himself standing beside Wright, watching the final preparations. "You know the odds," Wright said quietly, his eyes fixed on the bustling hangar bay. Talon nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "I do, but we have no choice. If Thrax succeeds—" Wright clasped Talon's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that transcended their species. "Then we stop him, together." As they boarded their stealth craft, Talon's enhanced senses picked up fragments of conversation from the assembled troops, a mixture of commitment, fear, and perseverance. Human and Tarkalian alike, they were united in their purpose. The ship's engines roared to life, propelling them towards the swirling chaos of the Xrillian Nebula. Ahead lay Thrax's forces, the bioweapon, and the fate of 2 civilizations hanging in the balance. Talon settled into his seat, his mind focused on the battle to come. Whatever happened, he knew that the next few hours would decide the future of both their species. The true test of their unlikely alliance was about to begin.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.